The sky above Lira's world had turned a deep, dying red. The wind carried dust instead of life, and the ground had cracked open like it had given up hope. Nothing grew anymore. No food, no water, only silence and hunger. Lira walked slowly across the empty land, her weak legs shaking with every step. In her arms, she carried her two small children. Their bodies were light, too light. Their breathing was soft and uneven. They had not eaten properly in many days. She looked down at them, her eyes filled with fear and pain. She had tried everything. She had searched every corner of her dying world, but there was nothing left. Only one choice remained. Far away, beyond the broken stars, there were stories. Stories about humans, a strange species, strong, cold, dangerous, but also survivors. Lira did not know if the stories were true, but she knew one thing: if she stayed here, her children would die. With shaking hands, she reached her old, damaged escape pod. It was not safe, it was not ready, but it was all she had. She placed her children inside carefully, covering them with the last piece of cloth she owned. Then she sat down, took a deep breath, and started the system. The pod trembled as it powered up. Warning lights flashed everywhere. System failure, low fuel, unstable navigation. Lira closed her eyes. "Please," she whispered softly, "just take us somewhere alive." The pod shot into the dark sky. Days passed. Inside the small pod, there was only silence. The children barely moved. Lira stayed awake, watching them, holding them close, praying they would survive just a little longer. Finally, the pod began to shake violently. Landing detected. Before she could react, the pod crashed hard into the ground. Everything went black. When Lira opened her eyes, she felt cold air on her skin. But this air, it was different. It was fresh, alive. She slowly pushed herself up and looked outside. Green. There was green everywhere. Grass, trees, life. Her heart beat faster. "We made it," she whispered. She quickly turned to her children. They were still breathing, weak but alive. She did not waste a second. Holding them tightly, she stepped out of the broken pod and started walking. After some time, she saw something in the distance. A small house, smoke rising from its chimney. Someone lived there. Her steps became slower. Fear filled her chest. This was it. The moment she had feared and hoped for. A human. She had heard stories. Humans were powerful. Some said they were kind. Others said they were ruthless. But Lira had no choice. She reached the wooden door and stood there, shaking. Her body was weak. Her children were barely alive. She lifted her hand and knocked. Once, twice. Silence. Then, the door slowly opened. A tall human man stood in front of her. His face was calm. His eyes were sharp, but not cruel. He looked at Lira, then at the children in her arms. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Lira felt her strength leaving her. She slowly dropped to her knees. Her voice was weak, almost breaking. "I have nothing left," she said softly. She lowered her head. "My world is gone. My children are starving." Her arms tightened around them, as if she was afraid they would disappear. Then she said the only thing she had left to offer. "I will give you my life. I will serve you forever." Her voice trembled. "Just, please, feed my children." The wind moved quietly around them. The moment felt heavy, like the universe itself was waiting for an answer. The human did not speak immediately. He simply looked at her shaking body, at her starving children, at the desperation in her eyes. Lira closed her eyes, ready for anything. Chains, orders, anything. Because for her, this was the only way to save her children. Then she heard something unexpected. A calm, steady voice. "Stand up." Her eyes slowly opened. The human stepped aside, holding the door open. "You don't need to kneel here," he said quietly. Lira froze. She could not understand. The human looked at her again, not as a master, but as something else. "Come inside," he said. "Let's feed your children first." Lyra's heart stopped for a moment. This was not what she expected, not at all. And somehow, that scared her even more. The door closed softly behind Lira, but the sound echoed loudly in her mind. She stood still just inside the house, her body tense, her arms tight around her children. Everything felt strange. The air was warm. The smell. It was something she had not sensed in a long time. Food. Real food. Her eyes moved quickly, watching every corner of the room. It was simple. Wooden walls, a small table, tools placed neatly. Nothing looked dangerous, but she did not trust it. Not yet. The human moved past her calmly, as if nothing was wrong, as if a starving alien mother standing in his home was normal.
Can I hold it?
"Sit," he said, pointing to a chair. Lira hesitated. Her mind screamed at her to stay alert. This could be a trap. Humans were unknown, unpredictable, but her children, they were too weak. Slowly, she sat down. The human brought a bowl of warm liquid and placed it in front of her. Steam rose gently into the air. Lira stared at it. Her hands trembled. "Eat," he said simply. She looked at him confused. "No conditions?" she asked softly. The human paused for a moment, then shook his head. "Just eat." Lira didn't understand, but she didn't argue. She lifted the bowl carefully and brought it to her children first. She fed them slowly, one small sip at a time. Their weak bodies reacted immediately. Their breathing became stronger. Their eyes opened slightly. A small sound escaped them, a sound of relief. Lira felt tears burn in her eyes. Only after her children had enough did she take a small sip herself. Warmth spread through her body. It felt like life returning. She closed her eyes for a second, just 1 second, but that 1 second felt dangerous. She quickly opened them again. The human was watching her, but not in a threatening way. His expression was calm, almost patient. "Why?" she asked suddenly. The words slipped out before she could stop it. "Why help me?" The human leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Because you needed help," he answered. "That's all." Lira stared at him. That answer made no sense. On her world, nothing was given without a price. Everything was a trade, a deal. Survival always had a cost. But here, there was nothing. No demand, no command, only help. Her heart felt uneasy. Days passed. The children slowly grew stronger. They could sit up now. They could speak again in soft voices. Sometimes, they even smiled. The human, Ethan, continued his routine like nothing had changed. He worked outside in the fields. He fixed tools. He prepared food. He never once asked Lira to serve him, and that made her more uncomfortable. One morning, while Ethan was outside, Lira stood quietly in the room. She looked around, clean, organized, safe, too safe. Her chest tightened. "This is wrong," she whispered to herself. She remembered her words, her oath. "I will serve you forever." That was not just a promise. In her culture, it was a binding truth, a life debt, something that could not be ignored. She could not just sit here, eating, resting, while giving nothing in return. So she started working. She cleaned the house carefully. She repaired small broken items using her knowledge. She even went outside and tried to help in the fields, even though her body was still weak. Every action felt right. Every action felt necessary. But she did it quietly, without asking, without being seen. Until one evening, Ethan returned earlier than usual. He stopped at the door, and he saw her. Lira was kneeling on the ground, fixing a tool with careful hands. Her body looked tired, but her focus was strong. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he stepped forward. "What are you doing?" he asked. Lira froze. She slowly looked up at him. "I am fulfilling my oath," she said simply. Ethan frowned slightly. "I didn't ask you to do this." Lira shook her head. "You shouldn't have to ask." She placed the tool down and lowered her gaze. "I gave you my life, my service. That is the only reason my children are alive." Her voice became softer. I cannot accept your kindness without giving something back. The room became silent. Ethan walked closer. Then he stopped in front of her. Look at me, he said.
But you're alone.
Lyra slowly lifted her eyes. His expression was serious now. Not angry, but firm. I don't want a servant, he said. Lyra's breath caught. But, she started. Ethan shook his head. If you stay here, he continued, you stand beside me, not below me. Lira felt her mind go blank. Beside him? That was not how the universe worked. That was not how survival worked. Her voice trembled. You refuse my oath? Ethan looked at her for a long moment. Then he gave a quiet answer. I refuse to own someone who came here to save her children. The words hit her harder than any weapon. She had prepared herself for pain, for control, for sacrifice, but not for this. Never this.
The days became calm, but Lyra's mind did not. Morning light touched the fields, and the air felt clean and alive. The children ran slowly between rows of green crops, their laughter soft but real. Each small step they took felt like a miracle. Lira stood near the edge of the field, watching them closely. Alive. That word still felt unreal. Ethan worked a few steps away, fixing a broken irrigation pipe. His movements were steady, careful. He did not rush, he did not waste energy. Everything he did had purpose. Lira had started to understand that. Humans were not loud or aggressive all the time like the stories said. They were controlled, focused, strong in quiet ways. And yet, something inside her still refused to relax. At night, when everything became silent, her thoughts grew louder. She would sit awake, staring into the darkness, remembering her world, the hunger, the fear, the end. And one more thing, the signal. Her escape pod. She had crashed far from the house, hidden behind trees and rocks. At first, she thought it was completely dead, broken beyond use. But she knew better. Even broken systems sometimes sent out weak signals, automatic distress calls, silent cries into space. If that signal was still alive, then someone could find it.
And there was no other choice.
One afternoon, while Ethan worked deep in the fields, Lira made a decision. She needed to check. She walked carefully through the trees, her steps light and silent. Every sound made her heart beat faster. The pod came into view. It was still broken. Burn marks covered its surface. One side was crushed into the ground. But as she moved closer, she heard it. A faint sound, a soft, repeating pulse. Beep, beep, beep. Her blood turned cold. No, she whispered. She rushed forward and opened the damaged panel. Sparks flickered weakly inside. The emergency signal was still active. It was weak, but not dead. That meant one thing. It had been sending her location for days, maybe longer. Her hands began to shake as she tried to shut it down. The system resisted at first, flickering and glitching. Stop, stop, she muttered. Finally, the sound died. Silence returned, but it was too late. Lira slowly stepped back, her mind racing. If anyone had received that signal, if anyone had tracked it, then they were already on their way. That night, the sky looked normal, too normal. Stars shined quietly above the farm. The wind moved gently through the trees. Everything felt peaceful. But Lira knew better. She stood outside, her eyes locked on the sky.
Do you plan to leave without saying
Ethan
anything?
noticed. He walked out of the house and stood beside her. You've been quiet, he said. Lira didn't look at him. They will come, she said softly.
I will not destroy your
Ethan's
life.
expression didn't change. Who? Lira finally turned to him.
Will not stop
Hunters,
what is
she
coming.
answered. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with something
You
deeper.
are not the problem. and
Fear.
You never were.
They track signals,
Those who came
weak worlds,
chose to bring
broken
change,
survivors.
not you.
My kind is easy prey now.
We should head back soon.
Ethan
Yeah, hold on.
remained silent.
Do you see that?
Listen. They don't negotiate, she continued. They don't ask questions. They take what they want. She paused for a moment. or destroy it. The wind grew slightly stronger, moving between them. "You should send me away," Lira said. Ethan frowned. "I won't bring war to your home." Her voice dropped even lower. "You saved my children.
Ethan?
I will not repay that by getting you killed." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. He simply looked at the sky. Then a small flicker appeared far
They are not
above,
the enemy.
a light, moving, then another, and another. Lyra's heart stopped. "They're here," she whispered. The lights grew brighter, cutting through the darkness like sharp blades. Shapes began to form behind them, ships, dark, silent, watching. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "So those are your hunters," he said quietly. Lira stepped back slightly. "You don't understand," she said quickly. "You cannot fight them. They will kill you." Her breathing became faster. "Please, just let me go. I will lead them away."
What's the situation?
Ethan didn't
Our hunter's
move.
close.
He didn't step
They attacked
back.
the perimeter
He didn't
an
show
hour ago.
fear.
We sent a
Instead,
signal,
he
but we had no
turned
response.
and walked calmly toward the house.
Squad, defensive positions.
Lyra stared
Move.
at him, confused.
Get that machine gun
"What are you
operational.
doing?" she asked.
incoming. Eyes to
Ethan opened the door and stepped inside. For a moment, there was silence. Then he came back out. In his hands was a weapon. Not advanced, not alien. Simple, but ready.
You are not alone.
He walked
anymore.
past Lira and stopped in front of the house, facing the
call
sky.
When the hunters
"They
sent
came
their
to your signal,"
I sent
he
one
said.
too.
His voice was calm. "But they landed on my land."
The hunters
Lyra
have
felt her
returned,
breath catch.
stronger
Ethan's
than
grip
before.
tightened slightly on
Their
the weapon.
numbers fill the horizon.
"And that means,"
The threat-
he continued, "they chose the wrong place." The ships above began to descend slowly. The ground trembled under their weight.
Humans,
The night was
you
no
harbor
longer
the one
peaceful.
known as Lira.
It was waiting.
Return her now,
The ground
or I will
shook
initiate
as the
total
ships landed.
destruction of this
Dust
field.
rose into the
This
air,
land is under
covering
human
the peaceful
protection.
fields
Your
that
demand
had
is
once
refused.
given life.
We don't care about your protection.
The soft night
Get out of our
was
way.
gone now. In its place, there was tension, heavy, sharp. Lira stood frozen near the house, her children behind her, holding on to her clothes in fear. The ships were tall, dark, and silent. Their surfaces looked like they
Why are you
swallowed
doing
light.
this for her?
No
It's
markings,
not just
no
about her
mercy.
anymore.
A low sound
about what
echoed
is
as one of
right.
the ship doors opened. Figures
all right.
stepped out, tall,
You don't have to be scared
armored.
anymore.
Their movements were slow, controlled.
We're a family
Hunters.
now.
They scanned the land with cold
The hunters
precision.
begin moving
Then,
into attack positions.
their eyes
Their
locked
ships
onto
spreading
Lira.
out aggressively.
"There," one of
The
them said,
human
his
fleet
voice deep
mirrors
and metallic. Lyra's heart dropped. Her body moved on instinct. She stepped forward, placing herself between them and her children. "I will come," she said loudly. Her voice shook, but she did not step back. "Leave this place, take me and go." The leader of the hunters tilted his head
Never seen
slightly,
anything
studying
like this
her.
before.
"You ran far," he said. "Made us waste time." His gaze shifted toward the house. "And now, you hide behind another species." Lira clenched her fists. "I said I will come," she repeated. "They have nothing to do with this." The leader gave a
She
small,
realizes the
cold
humans are
laugh.
not just protecting.
That is not
they
how
are
this
choosing
works.
to stand. This
He
is
lifted
not
his
forced.
hand slightly.
This is their decision.
More hunters stepped forward. "Anyone who shelters prey," he continued slowly, "becomes part of the
Attention all
hunt."
units. New heading,
Lyra's chest
grid coordinates, Gamma 12.
No, this was
Initiate the
exactly
counterattack
what she
formation
feared.
immediately.
Behind her, she heard
Look at them
footsteps.
run. We
Ethan.
actually did it. We
He
won.
walked forward calmly, stopping beside Lira. His presence was quiet, but it changed everything. The hunters noticed him immediately. "A human," one of them said. The leader looked Ethan up and down, almost amused. "You stand between us and our target?" he asked.
Sound the retreat.
Ethan didn't
We are
answer right
falling
away.
back.
He simply
I will
looked
not
at them.
lose any more ships today.
Then he spoke. "She's not your target anymore." The words were simple,
Confirmed.
but they
Final ship
carried
engaging
weight.
warp.
The hunters went silent for a moment. Then the leader smiled. "A claim?" he asked. "You think your words mean something here?" Ethan adjusted his stance slightly. "They're under my roof," he said. "That means they're under my protection." Lyra's eyes widened. She turned to him quickly. "You don't understand," she started, but Ethan didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on the hunters. The leader's smile disappeared. "You are one man," he said. "We are many." He stepped forward, his armor reflecting faint light. "You cannot stop this." Ethan's voice remained steady. "I don't need to stop all of you." He lifted his weapon slightly. "I just need to stop the first one who tries." Silence spread across the field. The wind slowed. Even the night seemed to pause. Then, a sharp movement. One hunter rushed forward, fast, deadly. The moment broke. A loud sound cracked through the air. Ethan fired. The first hunter dropped instantly. The others froze for a split second. Shock, then chaos. The hunters attacked. But Ethan moved before they could fully react. He stepped back, guiding the fight away from the house. His movements were sharp, controlled. Every step had purpose. The field became a battlefield. Traps hidden in the soil activated, metal spikes, sudden bursts of flame, wires snapping tight around legs. The hunters were strong, but they didn't know the land. Ethan did. One by one they fell, not easily, not quickly, but surely. Lira watched from the doorway, her heart pounding. This was not just strength, this was something else. Planning, patience, protection. Ethan was not fighting for power, he was fighting for something simple. A line he refused to let anyone cross. The leader growled in anger. "You think this changes anything?" He shouted. He raised a device and activated it. A sharp signal shot into the sky. Lyra's eyes widened. "No," she whispered. Ethan noticed. "What is that?" he asked. Her voice trembled. "A call," she said. "For more." The leader smiled again, even as he stepped back.
We picked him
"This
just
is not
for you."
over, human,"
Good girl.
he said.
Eat up.
"You have made yourself a target now."
You too, little one.
Then, without warning, he retreated toward the ship. The remaining hunters followed. Within seconds, the ships lifted off. Gone. The field fell silent again. Smoke rose slowly into the night air. The ground was damaged, but the house still stood. Ethan lowered his weapon. His breathing was steady, but his eyes remained sharp.
I really
Lira
want to.
stepped forward slowly. "You should not have done that," she said softly. Ethan looked at her.
Yes,
"They would
my
have taken
loves.
you," he
We
replied.
finally belong.
She shook her head. "They will come back," she said. "Stronger, in greater numbers." Ethan didn't respond immediately. He turned his gaze toward the sky, where the ships had disappeared. Then he spoke quietly. The next time, his grip
This
tightened
world
slightly.
is no longer alien.
"They won't leave." Lira felt
It is
something
home.
shift inside her. Fear was still there, but now it wasn't alone. The night felt different after the battle. The air was heavier, like the land
Protection
itself
continues
understood
even when
that
it is not
something had
visible.
changed. The soft peace that once lived around the small
It
house was
represents a
gone.
promise to defend
In its
those
place,
inside.
There was waiting. Lyra stood outside, looking at the damaged field. Burn marks covered the ground. Broken tools lay scattered. The signs of the fight were everywhere, but the house still stood. That mattered. Behind her, the children slept quietly, safe, warm, alive. She closed her eyes for a moment. This was never supposed to happen. Ethan had crossed a line for her, and now that line could not be undone. Morning came slowly. Ethan was already working, repairing what he could. His movements were the same
The
as
memory of her
always,
past no
calm,
longer feels like a
focused,
burden.
like the battle had
feels
not
like something
changed
she
him.
survived.
But Lira knew better.
And that is
She
why
walked
the river
toward him,
flows
her steps
fastest in the
careful.
spring,
"You should
carrying
stop,"
the melted
she said
snow
softly.
down from the mountain
Ethan
tops.
didn't look up. "Stop what?" "This," she said, gesturing to the field. "All of this." He finally glanced at her. "They damaged it," he replied. "So I fix it." Lira shook her head. "That's not what I mean." She took a breath. "You should send me away." The words felt heavy as they left her mouth. Ethan went still. "No,"
It
he
is
said
no
simply.
longer temporary.
Lyra stepped closer. You don't
It is
understand,
permanent.
she insisted. They will come back, not just hunters,
This land
fleets,
will always
armies.
protect those who
Her
belong
voice
to it.
trembled slightly. They don't forget. They don't forgive. Ethan placed his tool down and turned fully toward her. And you think leaving will stop that? He asked. Lyra hesitated. It will reduce the damage, she said quietly. They want me. If I'm gone,
They
you might
remember
survive.
what happened here.
Ethan looked
They
at her
know
for a
this
long
place is
moment.
no longer
Then he
weak.
spoke.
It has become
already
something
here.
else.
His voice was calm but firm. That means this place is already part of it. Lyra felt her chest tighten. This is not your war, she said. Ethan shook his head. You're wrong. He stepped closer, his eyes steady. It became my war the moment they stepped onto my land and threatened my home. The words hit her deeply. Home. She had not heard that word in a long time. Not like this. That night, Lyra made her decision. She could not stay. No matter what Ethan said, she could not bring destruction to him, to this place, to the only safe place her children had ever known.
It represents
She waited
choice.
until everything was quiet. Then she packed what little she
once
had.
believed
She wrapped her
survival meant
children
losing
gently and
everything.
carried them outside.
Now she knows
The sky
it can
was
mean
dark
gaining
again.
Something greater.
Silent. Too silent. She took one last look at the house. Warm light glowed from inside. For a moment. She didn't move. Her heart pulled her back. But her mind pushed her forward. She turned away. Leaving without saying goodbye? The voice stopped her instantly. Ethan stood a few steps away, watching her. Lyra's breath caught. She struggled to speak. I don't have a choice. Ethan walked closer. You always have a choice, he said. She shook her head. Not when others will suffer for it. Her voice broke slightly. I won't let that happen again.
It is small.
Ethan
but
looked at her
strong.
children, then back at
Its
her.
story has spread
You
beyond
think
it.
leaving protects us, he said. Lyra didn't answer. Look at me, he added. She slowly raised her eyes. Ethan's expression was different now, stronger, certain. You're not a threat to this place, he said. You're part of it. Lyra felt something inside her crack. That's not how the universe works, she whispered. Ethan gave a small, quiet breath. Then maybe the universe needs to learn something new. Silence filled the space between them. Then, a sudden sound broke the moment. A deep, distant rumble. Both of them looked up. The sky was no longer empty. Lights, many lights, far more than before. Lyra's face went pale. They came back, she whispered. Ethan's eyes narrowed, but this time, something was different. A second signal appeared from the opposite side of the sky. Bright, fast, controlled. Lyra frowned. That's not them, she said. Ethan watched carefully. Then slowly, a small, almost unnoticeable smile touched his face. They're not alone anymore, he said. The new ships moved into position. Clean, structured, organized, human. Lyra's heart skipped. You called them? She asked in shock. Ethan nodded once. They sent a signal, he said. So did I. The sky filled with tension. Two forces facing each other. One came to hunt, the other came to protect. Lyra looked at Ethan, her mind struggling to understand. You started this, she whispered. Ethan shook his head slightly. No. His voice was calm. They did. He looked back at the sky. But we're going to finish it. The first beams of light began to charge above. The battle had not ended. It had only grown, but this time, Lira was not alone.